He was 10 years old. At that age, most children are thinking about school, video games, or what they want for their next birthday. They are not thinking about courtrooms. They are not thinking about lawyers. And they are certainly not thinking about prison. But in 2022, inside a Milwaukee courtroom, a 10-year-old boy sat in front of a judge facing a charge that most adults cannot even comprehend. The charge was murder. Just hours earlier, he had been at home with his mother. An ordinary day, an ordinary argument. A disagreement that in most families would have ended with silence or tears, not sirens. And then something irreversible happened. The victim was 44-year-old Quiana Mann, a mother. A woman with routines, responsibilities, and a life beyond that single moment. The person responsible was her 10-year-old son. That detail alone turned a local tragedy into a national headline. The story quickly spread across the country. News outlets repeated the same shocking phrase, 10 years old. People struggled to process it, because when we hear murder, we imagine an adult. We imagine intent, calculation, understanding. We do not imagine a child whose homework might still be unfinished in his backpack. But behind the shock, there was a deeper question forming. Can a 10-year-old truly understand the consequences of taking a life? Or is that level of responsibility something that only comes with maturity? Is criminal intent something a child can fully form? Or are we projecting adult logic onto a developing mind? That question would define everything that followed. According to investigators, the argument that day may have started over a virtual reality headset. The child wanted one. His mother refused. In many households, that would have been the end of it. Disappointment, maybe frustration, a slammed door, a few angry words, but not tragedy, yet something escalated. Prosecutors later argued that this was not simply a moment of uncontrolled anger. They suggested the child understood his actions. They pointed to statements made after the incident that indicated awareness of what had happened, awareness of the seriousness. If that interpretation was correct, then the case shifted dramatically, because this was no longer about a child acting without thinking. It was about whether he had thought at all. The defense strongly disagreed. They reminded the court that brain development at age 10 is far from complete. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for impulse control, judgment, planning, and understanding long-term consequences, continues developing well into the mid-20s. In simple terms, children feel intensely, stronger than adults sometimes. Anger can feel overwhelming. Rejection can feel enormous. Humiliation can feel unbearable. But feeling something deeply does not automatically mean understanding the permanence of your response. A 10-year-old may know that something is wrong, but knowing something is wrong is different from grasping the lifelong consequences of that action. Psychologists testified about child cognition. They explained that children can plan actions. They can hide things, they can lie. They can anticipate short-term outcomes. But long-term consequence, especially the permanence of death, is harder to fully internalize. That distinction mattered deeply, because there is a profound difference between impulse and intention, between reaction and reflection, between a burst of anger and a decision weighed with adult understanding. The courtroom also examined another critical issue. How was a firearm accessible inside the home? Was it stored securely? Was it locked? Was this tragedy solely the result of one child's decision? Or was it the result of a chain of adult failures? Gun safety advocates pointed to statistics showing that shootings involving minors, both accidental and intentional, occur every year in the United States. Each case carries its own story, its own complexity, but this one stood out because it was not clearly labeled an accident. It raised the possibility of intention, and that possibility changed everything. Public reaction became sharply divided. Some people insisted that age should not erase accountability. They argued that if a person understands right from wrong, consequences must follow. Others argued that holding a 10-year-old to adult standards ignores neuroscience and child development. They warned against confusing moral outrage with legal reasoning. Both sides carried emotional weight. Both reflected fear, fear of violence, fear of injustice, fear that something in society is deeply broken. Inside the courtroom, however, the debate was more controlled. It was not about social media reactions. It was not about outrage. It was about definitions, legal definitions. Did the child understand the nature of his actions? Did he understand the difference between temporary anger and permanent loss? Did he understand that some choices cannot be undone? And perhaps the most uncomfortable question of all, if a child reaches this point, where does responsibility truly begin? With the child, with the parents, with access, with the system, or with all of it combined? At the center of this case is a life that was lost, a mother who will never return home, a family permanently altered, and a child whose future will never look the same. No legal outcome can undo that. No verdict can reverse that moment. But this case forces us to confront something larger than punishment. It forces us to confront development, responsibility, prevention. If justice only asks who committed the act, it may miss why it happened. If society only asks how to punish, it may ignore how to prevent. Children are capable of harm. That truth is uncomfortable. But they are also shaped by environment, guidance, access, and boundaries. They do not exist in isolation. When a 10-year-old stands in court facing a murder charge, we are not only witnessing an individual failure, we may be witnessing a systemic one. The legal system must decide guilt. But society must decide something else. How did we get here? And how do we make sure it does not happen again? Because when a child becomes the center of a murder trial, the tragedy is not only what was done. It is what it reveals, and that is what makes this case so deeply unsettling.